one's going to show up or not. I think last week we ended. Oh, first of all, let me just, in case any of you missed it, I made one minor change to the spec last night after talking with the CRE folks. So I posted it in the attestations group, but essentially, I talked to them and they said that they said to use the CRE identifiers rather than the URLs because there are organizations that use CRE data offline. So I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then they also have a documented CRE format, which is CRE colon and then integer minus integer. So that is part of the spec. And I did get clarification from them that a single requirement can actually map to multiple CREs. So I changed it. Basically, it was originally a string. It was basically a URL. So now it is basically an array of strings that must follow the CRE colon integer minus integer format. So and I updated the description to be a little bit better. But I posted the commit so you can see what those changes are. If you have any comments on it, if you want me to change anything, let me know.
Where did you post it?
What's that?
Where did you post it?
I posted the message and the commit in the workstream attestations channel in Slack.
The OWASP Slack?
No, the CycloneDX Slack.
Oh, I don't know if I have that. Oh, wait, maybe yeah, I do. I'm sorry. It's too many Slacks going on.
Yeah, you and me both.
Got it.
They should have a hierarchy of Slacks actually, because there's some channels that I would love to link into the OWASP Slack because it makes a lot of sense to do so, and there's other channels that just don't.
Right.
So I'll need to figure that out at some point. I think we ended last meeting talking about starting on the guide, because if we want people to actually use our spec, we have to let them know, one, it exists, which we will, but two, and more importantly, is how to use it. And my assumption is that the audience might be a little bit different from the typical SBOM person who's usually a developer or a security person. The consumer for this might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to start working? Maybe like an outline for the guide?
Yeah. So
Google Doc or something?
what I was thinking, I was just going to brainstorm. So I've just started like a little X-mine, just a little simple mind map. So this would be kind of like the outline of the guide. All of our guides kind of follow the same type of format. The cover is already created, but it's subject to change, obviously. We'll have an introduction that talks about CycloneDX and all of its capabilities. That won't necessarily change, but all the rest of it is wide open. So, what do we want to have after, like, here's the introduction.
Just off the top of my head, it feels like it ought to be kind of procedural, like you start out with this concept like I want to attest to something, and so the first step is probably like, well, okay, what? Or like maybe you're being required to attest to something, so that's where you start, right? It's like I got to attest to SSDF or whatever else it is, and then so you could talk about that. It's okay. First thing you're going to need is machine readable copy of that standard with numbers and stuff. And so that. And then we could go through the rest of the process. Like, okay, so then let's pick one requirement. And like, okay, how do you deal with it? Well, we got to generate some evidence or make some claims about that. Like, how do you meet that claim? how do you meet that requirement? And then some evidence to support the claim. So I can see like the sections following that. And then like the last thing is probably like about sign off and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
That's how I think about it in my head, but probably other ways of doing it.
Yeah, I think kind of guiding people to what we're calling them, the official CycloneDX standards. What are the project name is? And kind of walking through that as like a starting place. So like, here's what already exists. And then I think,
What do you mean?
yeah,
Here's what already exists.
in terms of like how to find the existing standards in this format. Let's see what we call it. Yeah,
That's much
official
better.
third-party standards.
What's that? Third-party standards?
Yeah, I think, and then I think in parallel, maybe fleshing that out, like as we have solidified the standard, like I think the first ones that were near, SSDF and PCI were really there, help us like flesh out that we had the right thing. But yeah, I think next part would be then it's like, okay, like begin to tell people like, these are what's currently there. Let's choose one. I think going down the path that Jeff was talking to.
So you're saying third-party standards, which should it be just standards though?
I think pointing people to where they can find the existing standards that we have already created, we've already translated.
Right.
So,
Were you on the call last week where we said I actually was able to convert the one PCI standard,
hmm
the secure SLC standard, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I just didn't know if you were there or not and heard that. And then if I were to break this down in terms of like chapters and sections within the chapters, because that's kind of what we're modeling here. So what would be next after standards?
Well, my thing on standards was like, it's just that chapter is where you discuss like what you want to attest to. Could be a third party standard, it could be just an internal standard, or like it's just choosing a standard.
yeah.
Okay, so let's flesh that out a bit. So we've got internal standards as well that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could probably talk a little bit about creating new standards or adapting.
hmm
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. We don't really have an extension mechanism, do we?
For what?
Well, like if you wanted to adopt like, PCI SSC plus or something like, way to just embrace and extend the standard for your own, like I can imagine a lot of people wanting to do that, or even like kind of smooshing two standards together. But we can do that down the road. I mean,
yeah, we can probably reuse a lot of that pedigree functionality. So that, like, for example, if you wanted to fork ASVS, for example, which a lot of organizations do, you could theoretically describe that.
Yeah.
Let's wait for the next version to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Okay. So we can talk a little bit about standards. internal, external, where to find them, if you're creating your own, how to do that,
Yep.
or adapting existing standards. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to
Um,
contribute, always a nice place to make a hook, like, hey, we're looking for people to do these other standards that are out there, like, I don't know, like ISO or whatever.
right, exactly. Exactly. Okay. Um, so the next logical thing is then actually attesting, right?
Yeah. Well, don't you make claims and evidence and then you attest to those things, or those are attestations, really, right? Like claim and evidence together.
Right. So I'm
We're making
thinking
attestations.
about,
Okay.
yeah. So, and then within this chapter, we can talk about claims, right?
Mhm.
Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. Claims. Why? Oh, did it go? Get it? Oh, there it goes. The machine is just really slow today. Claims, evidence.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, evidence. Come on.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the spec too.
Oh yeah. Uh, counter evidence. Mitigation strategies. Um, well, these are what they are. So let's see. Claims, evidence. Um,
I would almost leave signatories out and put that as a separate topic.
what's that?
I would leave the signatories out and make that like a separate chapter.
Okay, I can do that.
It kind of comes at the end, right? Like,
Is there anything else that should be in the chapter called making attestations?
I just feel like that's going to be pretty heavy. I was wondering if we could split out evidence from claims. Does that make sense at all? Because I feel like making attestations is like, here's our intent, or like the claims part is like, here's our intent on how we intend to meet this requirement. And then there's a separate process, like either during the build or during testing or whatever, that generates the evidence and attaches it to the claim.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, we could make it all in one big chapter. It is kind of the heart of what we're doing. I'm just trying to balance things out a little bit.
No, I think makes a lot of sense because then you're dividing it by kind of like roles and responsibilities. Someone makes a standard, someone generates the evidence, and someone else is going to make the attestation on it.
Right. Yeah, you could almost think about like a security person or a compliance person making the standard, a like some kind of security architect making the claims, and then development might ideally development generates all the evidence, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got another chapter, substantiating claims with evidence. That one's going to be, I think, fairly lengthy and in depth. Um, however, this doesn't belong there. Where does this belong?
Mitigation strategies?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, is that part of maybe
I feel like you
is
kind
that
of
part of a is that part of a poem type of chapter, or do we want to talk about that? I mean, it's a kind of a US centric term, but um
yeah, maybe it's just another section that's like after you substantiate your claims with evidence, then there's another step that says like, hey, some of these aren't good enough. Like we've got to do some, we've got to, it's like mitigating arguments, mitigating weaknesses in the argument, or just mitigating
mhm,
weakness.
mhm.
I've never been a huge fan of that term poem. I think it's just confusing.
I think so too, but yeah, I guarantee you people are going to be searching for that term.
I was suggesting making it another step, like after you substantiate the claims with evidence, like then there's like actually it's like another chapter that's like, hey, I got holes in my argument. What do I do now?
Well, that's why I was asking you about the mitigation strategies, because that was so you want to pull the poem and mitigation strategies out to another chapter, or do you want it in the chapter for making attestations?
I was thinking it should go in the another chapter, like after chapter 4.
Okay.
Would you
Um,
want to throw counter claims in that too?
uh, technically, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, what do we call this chapter?
Problem.
You've got issues.
Yeah, maybe it's just handling issues. Or it's really all kind of weaknesses, right? Like,
Documenting non-conformance.
Yeah,
hmm,
documenting non-conformance.
the audit folks are going to love that chapter.
It'll be
Ooh,
a
hold on.
bestseller.
My wheelhouse.
It'll be a bestseller. Okay.
Documenting nonconformance mitigation strategy is not it. Well, it's part of documenting nonconformance. It's like, hey, I got a problem, and here's how I deal with it. So I guess I'd be into that. And then I figured we'd have one more chapter on like signing shit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you non-repudiation or integrity or whatever.
Would you break out signatories as a separate item from the overall signing of the document?
Nope. I'd put all the signing stuff in one big chapter.
Okay.
But some people may not care. Like they may be using it internally or something and they're not, it doesn't matter for them, but some people might want to really have a signing strategy.
And then we can talk about let's
Signatories.
see. Yeah. Um, okay.
Do we care any about like distribution in terms
Yeah,
of,
we do. We need to figure out, I mean, this is how you do it. How do you operationalize it? Which distribution is part of that, right?
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, maybe that's just after signing is like either distribution or like all of operationalizing.
What's that? What do we want to call it?
Oh, you called it operationalization or
Right.
operationalizing.
We can call it at ops. It's a new term.
Nice.
No, we don't need that. uh, no, I don't know. We want to do recommendations. I'll just call it that for now. I don't know what to call it right now. Come on. Part of this is going to be
Just call it
distribution, right?
implementing.
Oh yeah, implementing.
Oh, sorry, I meant for the whole chapter.
Oh, for the whole chapter. Yeah,
I just went to the thesaurus.
yeah.
I think there's like some key things that we're kind of making assumptions on. One of them would be, and I know there's some other work on this, but like merging, right? You have a standard and you have this body of evidence. They're probably going to start out as two separate CycloneDX SBOMs that needs to be merged. Or what's the linkage between them? Would be, I think, one thing that people are going to have to think through a little bit.
Okay, we'll have to modify that bomb link. We've got a chapter on bomb link. Okay, so that's good.
So you're saying like
Should that be?
if there's
Yeah.
a system of components?
I'm thinking about it from like the standards perspective, where we release, say, like the PCI standard. We wouldn't want people to take that released SBOM and begin to amend it with evidence claims and all this other stuff. We probably want to encourage people to have a separate managed or separate generated SBOM or separate generated bomb that they then would somehow link or merge with the PCI standard. You want to kind of keep them separate probably until you try to release it.
Yeah,
Right.
you're right. It's good. There's going to be a complex set of documents that link together here.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great topic for like implementation.
Okay.
It's
All
a
right.
fair
I was
point
gonna.
because I think a lot of SBOMs are really relatively narrow. They're focused in on some small portion, but usually you don't care about attestations on that thing. attestations are usually at the highest level, like at a product level or a system level. Mhm.
Okay.
Are there any, under the implementing chapter, are there any like versioning, timing kind of topics that we should cover here?
I think the SBOM guide actually has in its introduction how the versioning and the object model kind of works.
Okay.
So I think that's covered. But but um for this, we might actually want to have like a best practices
Yeah.
section where we actually call out versioning and some of the other things.
Yeah. I wonder if there's like, kind of breaking changes, think like when do you have to update your attestations, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of practical considerations here. Were you on the call with Jake when he was talking about that? He's like, right now we analyze systems on a 1 or 3 year schedule.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
So there's going to be a lot of change to these systems in between
Oh
attestation.
yeah. Oh yeah. For sure. Um yeah, either the systems or I mean it depends on what they're attesting to, but yeah, either the systems or the development teams building them or maintaining them.
Yeah.
Um hopefully things get better, but that's not always true. Sometimes they get worse. um okay, so the introduction standards, making attestations, talks about claims, substantiating claims with evidence, documenting nonconformance, signing signatories and signing for authenticity, and implementing, sharing and distribution, making attestations. Okay.
Maybe it's outside the guide, but do you need to have like examples of this bomb that we can point people to? Are
Hmm.
you, are we doing that separately than this? Does that fall under the specification? I know you have tests, but is there a separate project for like example bombs that we should probably update with some of this stuff?
Yeah, we probably should. We've got the bomb examples repo,
Okay.
and I mean we've got the third party standards repo as well. But we can we can use the bomb examples repo for the attestations, and then for the if people want to see the standards themselves, we'll just link them over to the repo specifically for all the standards. Hopefully, hopefully that becomes kind of a temporary kind of repository, and that all the big players, PCI Council, etc., start publishing their own um, authoritative versions
Right.
of their specs in this format. So that's the end goal.
I'm wondering if there's a, s- a section here for like tool creators, or like people that want to build stuff to automate this. Is there, I don't know, I hate to cede that stuff to like CISA. Uh, things like you know, they've got working groups around that are working on quality of SBOM
Yeah.
and rating that. And I don't know, I wonder if there's a, you know, if we build it into the guide here and said like, here's how you know whether this is a good attestation or not, might be
Mm.
able to get in front of that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the SBOM guide. We've got that quality indicators. We could come up with another one specifically for attestations. Sure, why not? Um,
People seem to want to do that because I think people get these big documents and they're like, well, I got to know like if it's any good or not.
right. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, about quality and yeah.
But I was also thinking about tool vendor, like anybody who wants to create tools around attestations. I don't know if we have any guidance on to help them at this point. Um,
Mm, I
yeah,
think we can
probably
definitely
not.
talk about I think we should probably definitely talk about automation in here in some sense. Because not everything, I mean, depending on the standard, right? Some things can be automated, other things just they can't.
Yeah, we should talk
Or
about that. I don't know if that's in the evidence section, maybe, but it's someplace you want to talk
Mhm.
about, like what does a pipeline look like?
Mm,
Because you can't really automate the claims, right? Or do you think you can? Maybe you can if the requirement is amenable to that.
yeah, yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. So did you want to add a chapter on automation? Or do you think it'll just kind of work it out in each section kind of talks about automation?
I really like your idea of a pipeline. Um, we should somewhere we obviously need to talk about automation, but we also need to talk about the role of GRC and how GRC plays in with this. Because if you have a mitigation strategy, well, that's going to be on somebody's risk register somewhere, usually.
Sorry, say that again.
Um, we'll need to figure out how to talk about attestations and how that ties into GRC. Because if you have like mitigation strategies, that's going to likely be on somebody's risk register.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that goes up implementing. I don't know. Maybe it goes up in this chapter.
I could see it being there. I think implementation or implementing is a good place for it too. Like at that point, you're talking about how do we do enterprise
Right.
implementation.
Yeah, I mean, it can go either place. That was my first. And then
It's probably covered in other areas too, but do we really just want to call it inside implementing a very specific section on integrating legacy processes?
what would go in that section?
I think your example, like training, for example, like how do you capture training as an evidence? Maybe you have paper-based processes that you need to capture, and you capture here.
Okay. Yeah. Um,
Ah, yeah, I like that.
paper what? What was your paper something?
Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe said paper processes, but paper-based process.
Okay, integrating legacy and manual processes. Okay. At this point, I think we're giving individuals kind of a roadmap to the next startup. Because none of these tools exist today.
Yeah, there are companies that do stuff like this with standards, but they don't have a machine. You know, they just have a proprietary way of talking about
Right.
requirements.
Yeah.
We should actually probably check some of them out and understand what they do, and maybe make sure our standard can handle whatever they do.
Are you thinking about like SD elements types of folks, or some
There's
different,
other ones,
different?
but yeah, that's the idea. Is anybody who manages the compliance process. And I know I've seen other ones at conferences and stuff. I mean, frankly, I couldn't really care less, but
Yeah,
there are
it's not my
companies that
thing.
do that.
Yeah,
No, I don't want to do it. I just want to help people automate it. Make it go well.
exactly. Yeah, okay. I actually think that's a really good start.
Yeah, me too.
Um, okay.
I feel like the intro should have some details on like the problem that we're trying to solve and the consequences of that problem, and just kind of big picture it for folks, because it sucks.
Okay.
This absolutely sucks.
It does.
There's nothing about this that works. Implement least privilege. Okay. Right.
Problem statement. What was the other thing? Something sucks.
Well, I guess it's really just the yeah, like the practical challenges that people are experiencing and the consequences of that. Like why is it's there's like technical problems, but then there's consequences of that, which is like this culture of checkbox security and compliance that doesn't do anybody any good. It's just a massive money and time suck that keeps us from actually being
Right.
secure. Should get Josh Corman to write that section.
There you go.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, but I mean, for me, specifically SSDF, but like maybe outline who would want this as a body of evidence. But that'd probably be good to include
Oh
in
yeah,
this
like the
introduction.
intended audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we got about 10 minutes left. And I think this is a pretty outstanding outline. What do we do between now and the next time we meet? Like, what's
I'm
the next
glad you
step?
asked. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to share this. I'll put that in the Slack.
Okay.
Let's see, where is my IntelliJ? Where's my share button go? There it is. IntelliJ guides. Okay, so we've got the guides repository, and this is kind of the directory structure. We got, at the very top, we've got the type of guide, and then we've got the language, and then it's always 0x, and then 1 through 99, basically. So for the chapters, what we've been doing is the chapter is like the 1, for example, in here, and then like a smaller part of that chapter will be like 11 or 12 or 13, and then the next chapter will be 0x20, 0x30. So we can go ahead and start making the chapters for what it is that we just outlined, and I can do that right after this call. That way it gives us a kind of a placeholder. But what we can do is just start writing that. Really, I mean, I'll put in all the sections of what it is that we just discussed, and then we can via just normal Git PRs, we can just contribute to writing the content. So it should be fairly simple, as long as we have kind of a clear indication of who's working on what, and we kind of merge that in quickly, because we don't want things to kind of stagnate. Unlike code, this is going to be like large, like changes to the same files over and over again.
Sounds
Does
good to
that
me.
sound reasonable?
Yeah.
And then are there other activities we should begin sooner than later? Like I mentioned examples, but what's an appropriate time to start reaching out to some of the different library maintainers or tool maintainers within
To support
CycloneDX?
this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't understand, like, in terms of timing, do they typically wait until a revision comes out and then they worry about implementing it? Or do they like to have some time ahead? Okay.
Usually, but all the reference implementations usually get a jump on it. So
Okay.
we've got the next maintainers meeting. I think it's next week. Yeah, I think the CycloneDX maintainers meeting is next week. And we've only got a handful of reference implementations, and they are Java, Go, and .NET. Those are the 3. The JavaScript one, I think, is pretty close. I'm not sure if it's quite there yet, but those are the 3 like reference implementations that basically all other implementations are kind of measured against. They support the entirety of the standard, that sort of thing. I think the Java one is probably the most comprehensive one. But yeah, we can go ahead and start now that we have the schema, at least for this already kind of, I think, kind of nailed down already. We can go ahead and start implementing that. I can let the maintainers know next week. That way the libraries can start being used by tool makers. So, I mean, again, chicken and egg problem, right? So, yeah, I think it's on the 17th. Let me double check my calendar.
Hey, Steve, where is this repo? I can't find it. Oh, is it,
Yeah, it's
where's development?
it is, yeah, it's next Tuesday. Let's see. The repo is actually private, Jeff.
Ah, okay.
So let me invite you.
It's like, man, I'm going crazy.
No, you're not. Let's see. It's not specification, it's guides.
Right.
Guides. And then collaborators and teams. Use GitHub Mobile. Am I the only one that doesn't like GitHub Mobile? I
I'm
feel
not
like I am. Okay. Add people. There we go. All right, Jeff. You got access to the guides.
We'll see about that.
Have a little faith, man.
I can't.
Let's see. I'll put it in. I'll put the link in the chat. Oh, Ian already did. Okay.
Thanks. That would help.
Yeah, you should get an invite from GitHub.
Oh yeah, I think I have to. I was still searching for it, but I think I have to accept the invitation before I can get access to it.
Yeah, yeah.
There
yeah.
you go.
So yeah, I'll start making the chapters, the chapter files for this, and then populate the headings, and then we can just, over the course of the next week, we can start working on them. This is the what the current cover looks like. We can obviously change this at any time.
Do all the guides use that same
Yeah.
cover? Or okay. Oh.
Yep. Yeah, it's the same cover as the SBOM cover, but different words in the middle.
Are there other guides besides SBOM and attestation? Are there like?
Well, there's the SASBOM guide that's kind of in development. We've got a CBOM guide that will be in development. I think we're going to launch with that one, hopefully. But yeah, SASBOM is probably the next one in line. We also have a VDR and VEX guide that we're working on as well. So, because the only stuff you're getting from that is from the CISA working groups, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think people need
that one won't be
actual guides.
controversial.
No, of course not. Nothing we do ever seems to be controversial. But I think we made a lot of good progress today, though.
Yep.
So thank you for that. Got 4 minutes left. I can give you back some time if you like.
I guess question would be is when do you want to try to get the the guide polished and ready for release? Like, what's the time frame between here and the end of the year? Just so I mentally figure out my priorities.
um, I think it's really funny because the attestation guide is, I think, really important, especially for our federal friends, to kind of actually see how this would actually work, and how it would um, replace legacy things like PDFs, especially for you know um, small startups and large companies that have tens of thousands of products.
We should have an
Um,
executive summary, by the way, for this. I don't know if that's part of the introduction, but like we should
we
have
can.
something that rolls it up for the
Is there
folks who aren't
somebody at
ready to do
Lockheed,
this.
like an executive at Lockheed, that would want to write something like that? Or Jeff, do you want to write something like that? I mean, we could have an executive summary. We can have a preface, a preface, preface,
Preface.
preface, preface.
One face on.
Um,
I'm happy to approach it. I can think of a couple executive vice presidents I can talk to you about it.
okay, awesome. Yeah, ping me on, DM me with if you need anything. But yeah, the attestation work I think is really important. I would like to get an actual guide. If we can get an actual guide published sometime in December, that would be amazing to me. I don't know if that's possible or not.
It depends on how long you want it to be.
Longer than the Cliff Notes version.
Well, I mean, I don't say that totally
I know.
as a joke. Like, we can make a first version of it and then
Yeah.
beef it up.
That's what we did with the SBOM guide. We could have went well over 100 pages, but I think we cut it short at, like, I don't know, 70 or something like that. And some of this, it doesn't all have to be words. In fact, I would rather it not be all words. Right? Top to bottom, like, wall of text is not very fun. Although it might, it might be familiar to our federal folks. I like pictures, especially for process flows and that sort of thing,
Sure.
or to visualize how all these different pieces actually fit together. So if we want like illustrations somewhere, if we think a section needs an illustration, just put a to do in there and
Right.
actually call it out. Myself, Kayla, Meredith, we can come up with some illustrations that would work. So I know we had some different illustrations in the SBOM guide as well. So, and those seem to work out really well.
Perfect. So the 1.6 is scheduled to come out in December, right?
Yeah,
So it'd be
that's our
great
goal.
it would be great if we had this done by then.
Yeah. Yep. And then the CBOM stuff, which is also part of, like, it's really interesting. The executive order also calls for a bunch of zero trust type thing. And as part of that effort, cryptography is specifically called out in the executive order, and there's an OMB memo specifically for cryptography transparency, but yet it's not part of SBOM. So I think it's
Right.
one of these things that, Alan's just not, either his work is just not scoped to that, but the fact that we're paying attention to both is kind of important, in my opinion. Because there are dates tied to that OMB memo.
This is off topic a little bit, but I'm curious your take on the custom code discussion that's going on the SBOM forum list. Like,
Custom
how do you
code.
feel about that? Like, should SBOMs cover custom code, or should they
Oh,
just
like all first party code?
Yeah.
I think SBOM should cover everything that's modular. So if it's first party jar, third party jar, it doesn't matter. It's a jar, and it should be in your inventory. That's my. What's that?
What does it matter if it's modular? Just curious.
Well, if you don't have a module system, if you're just compiling like a a hello world type thing and there are no modules, well, it's just first party code. What are you going to include in the inventory? There's nothing to include.
Well, it's
But if there's reusable
something, right?
components,
What if
yeah,
it's
if
not
there's
reusable though? Like my reason for asking is like, I want to use the SBOM as the structure that I hang assurance on. And so I need all the components in it. Like to me, the SBOM's like the Christmas tree, and then I can talk about the attributes of each piece of software in there. But it just seems like the custom code is so important that the SBOM is like a really good reflection of the actual, all the contents of the software, if it doesn't have like the most important component, which is like the main program.
Yeah, the reason why I call out the modularity of it is because I don't think we want to scare off the lawyers who worry about disclosing intellectual property.
Oh yeah, I don't give a fuck about them.
I know. Well, they can, they do have a large microphone, so yeah.
Is there any, I mean, at the end of the day, though, like that's gonna cause so many headaches, like the number of NDAs, like that are gonna have to be signed and managed.
That's why I think
Yeah.
attestations are the easy button. I really think attestations are going to be shared a lot more than SBOMs.
Yeah. Well, it kind of backdoors in the requirement to disclose the fact that you have a custom code piece there somewhere, right? Because you're making attestations about the whole thing.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. I won't push on that too hard because I don't want to upset the apple cart. But it drives me crazy because I've spent my whole career focused on the custom code piece, which I strongly believe is the most important. And it's great to get your libraries cleaned up, but it's not the most important thing.
And I think once we start talking about blueprints for the next release,
right,
that's going to be really important because I keep on talking about the three personas that OWASP is generally about: builders, breakers, defenders. And bills of materials don't really help defenders at all.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, they turn off some lights or turn on some lights in some cases, but
yeah, it's not really full transparency for them.
Oh, looks like we lost them.
Right. That was it. I gotta go.
All right, Jeff.
Yeah,
Catch you later.